some of these things being loosened up. But this is kind of ridiculous. It's petty and silly. You know, for Trump he wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. You know, it's like stupid shit, right?
In line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is...
Yeah, but him changing that is kind of fucked, right? Gulf of America.
Is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server, and Apple has recognized that, Google has recognized that, pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America, and it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here.
It's just so petty and fucking Trump-esque, the Gulf of America. But let's take a look and see if Google does recognize it. Okay, so I typed in Gulf of Mexico, and it changed it to Gulf of America. I can do that again here, right? Well, you know, this is what happens. And now it's called Gulf of America on Google Maps. So he's done it, but the AP reporter was being a dick to Trump, and not letting him have his little petty thing that he's done here. You know.
You know, just a quickie here, guys. I'm still trying to get used to this new USGS map because they changed it and they put the Gulf of America in, and they
Oh, and by the way, the Associated Press was not allowed in the Oval Office for this event, so one of their reporters took to Twitter to complain, saying, today our AP White House reporter was denied access to the Oval Office because the Associated Press recognizes the international body of water on our southern coastline as the Gulf of Mexico. Well, it's no longer the Gulf of Mexico, it's the Gulf of America. Even on Google Maps, they changed it to accurately title it the Gulf of America. And
Donald Trump and the acquisition of Greenland and the acquisition of making Canada the 51st state, and how this is all part of the New World Order's blueprint. Well, today they announced the red, white, and blueland, as the Republican Party has unveiled a bill to rename Greenland to Blueland and to acquire Greenland as a part of the North America Union.
Well, guys, if you're looking for the Gulf of Mexico these days, it doesn't exist. It's now officially Gulf of America. It's been updated over here at Google Earth. It's also updated on Google Maps. I'm sure by now everybody else has got the memo. Once again, the Gulf of Mexico is now officially the Gulf of America. Also in this video, once again, if you're searching for the Gulf of Mexico, it no longer exists. It is now officially the Gulf of America. Coming over here.
yes! And this is an image from Google Maps. Notice that the former Gulf of Mexico has been properly renamed in accordance with President Trump's executive order as the Gulf of America. Trump derangement syndrome.
I found this rather interesting and enlightening, and an explanation as to why we changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Here on this channel called Real Fishing Life the other day, made a video titled Chemtrail Fallout in the Gulf of Mexico. And I left a comment said, didn't we buy the Gulf of Mexico and rename it the Gulf of America? He said that actually abolished all the laws protecting the Gulf of Mexico, and now it's China owns all of it. My uncle works in the oil field industry, and they are pumping all the natural gas out and ship it to China as we speak. I haven't heard anyone talk about the explanation as to why we renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and I think this explains it. I've seen this same thing happen 2 other times. where they circumvented the Constitution and the Geneva Convention by changing one word. When they changed the word prisoner of war to detainee, that circumvented all the agreements, the international agreements of what a war crime is. And there were agreements that we had about treatment of POWs, prisoners of war. Once we name them detainees, then we can hook electrical batteries to their genitals like we saw pictures coming out from Abu Ghraib. And we can treat them in ways that are specifically outlawed, which would otherwise get us charged in the International Criminal Court and brought before the Hague. All that came about, all those international laws came about after World War II, and we established these international agreements about treatment of prisoners of war. Just the idea of a war crime blows my mind. It's like, isn't war like all bets are off? There are no more laws of what's legal and illegal, but that's a side note. The other way that I saw that happen, they changed the word prisoner of war to detainee, and now all agreements that we had about prisoners of war no longer apply because we don't have any prisoners of war. We have detainees, and we can torture them in whatever ways we want because there are no agreements about treatment of detainees. Or enemy combatants. That's another word they gave it, probably also to circumvent laws and agreements. That's how they did it overseas. The way they did it locally was turning the name of a suspect into a person of interest. Just the idea that you call someone a suspect raises two questions. A, what are they suspected of? And B, what evidence do you have that makes you suspect them of this thing? That's what outlines probable cause to arrest them and interrogate them. We no longer have suspects. These are persons of interest, and there are no outlined agreements or specifications about the criteria by the evidence you have that makes a person of interest the way we had about suspects. So by changing those two words, they circumvented the Constitution by changing suspect to person of interest, and they circumvented the Geneva Convention about what constitutes torture. Remember waterboarding? That's not torture, that's enhanced interrogation. By playing a little word game and changing a word, it completely makes all agreements that we had null and void. Regarding the Gulf of Mexico, we probably had international agreements about what you could do in that body of water and what you couldn't. So we just renamed it the Gulf of America. And this is what corporations do when they declare bankruptcy on a corporation and then open up shop again under a different name. Even though it's the same warehouse, the same manufacturing equipment, even the same employees within the same building, they're now operating under a different name, and they offload all the debt they had acquired from the old company name when they filed bankruptcy. And this is what James True says happened during the first Trump administration when they removed the presidential seal for about a week, and he was doing speeches and there was no presidential seal on the podium. James says they closed the United States corporation, and this is bankruptcy. And in a bankruptcy, some debts just get written off altogether. Other debts, you got to pay 10 cents on the dollar, and we owed China so much that maybe this is how we're paying off some of the debts that we owed China when we declared bankruptcy on the corporation of the United States. And that's all we would have to do to circumvent all other agreements like the Constitution, is just rename the country. And if we acquire Canada, are we still going to be called the United States or something more like the North American Union? Now, I also heard that Trump changed the name of Mount McKinley back to Mount McKinley. Apparently, it had been changed to some other name, and he changed it back to Mount McKinley. And if you ask the average person, why did he change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, they would probably have some answer like, for, excuse me, heritage, morale, trying to boost the morale of the American people, like our history and our culture and our heritage, how they were trying to tear down our statues and demoralize the American culture and make us not proud of our history. And that's why he changed Mount McKinley back to McKinley to represent President McKinley. And that's why he changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America to boost the morale and the belief in the American way of life. They think of it as some sort of symbolic thing to boost morale, and that's why we changed. I haven't heard anyone talk about the actual reality of what it means and what it affects by changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Not one person have I heard speak of the actual, real, physical implications of what that affects. I think most people would probably think of it as I just described, just symbolic, something about culture and morale and heritage and shit like that. But I think this is the real answer. By changing a word slightly, it makes old contracts null and void. And I believe this is probably the answer that we're looking at right here. James jokingly said in one of his recent videos, I think Trump's going to rename Florida to Magabama and rename Mexico to Florida 2.0. And he said that jokingly, but there may be an actual underlying tongue-in-cheek reality to this, just because by renaming something, it completely reorients. All bets are off. All agreements that we had regarding that thing that we once called America no longer apply. All you have to do is rename it. And you would have thought that you have to go through some sort of process to rename something, not just a one-off statement that he made in a speech saying, we're going to call it the Gulf of America now. And I do see people showing that, look, Google's going along with it. Google on Google Maps has changed the name of that to the Gulf of America. And listen to this pilot on this airline while he's talking to the passenger. This is your pilot speaking. If you look out your right window, you'll see the Gulf of America that we're flying over. And they're referencing people that are going along with it, which gives it some sort of validation and validity to it. And apparently that's all it takes. If the people go along with it, then it's now the Gulf of America. And countries that once existed no longer exist. The landmass still exists. The people that lived in that area still live in that area, but the name of the country and their constitution, their corporate business model, and their mission statement has changed. It's just the signage on the front of the building that changes. When you collapse a corporation, you make it go bankrupt, and then you start up business under a new name. That's all that really happens. And James says, countries aren't what you really think they are. And I've often confused the word company with country because they do operate very similarly. So there may be some truth underlying the idea that the corporation of the USA is out of business, no longer operating, and they kind of announced this by removing the presidential seal, and no one noticed. And as these things take place, we might see all bets are off. All ideas that you once had about the Constitution and your rights and the Bill of Rights and all of that shit, well, that's from back when in America, and America no longer exists. No, that's a thing of the past. Those agreements that we had with the citizens of the USA, that no longer exists. You're now residents of the North American Union. We renamed it, and we started up business under a new name. You're like the employees in the building that are watching the old business declare bankruptcy, and the new business start under a new header, and you don't even realize what's going on around you. I think that might be what's going on. Greenland, we're going to take Greenland and Canada and maybe the Gaza Strip and rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Meanwhile, people don't even see what's actually happening. They see that name change as just some sort of symbolic thing that'll have no real world effects and consequences. So as for the Gulf of Mexico, there were probably, and still are, many contractual agreements that we had signed on to, international agreements, about pumping that natural gas and that oil and what we will and won't do in the Gulf of Mexico. And the right-wing, red-coat, conservative, Christian, Republican patriots that are all pro-Trump, might be able to see this as a good thing. Like, yeah, they signed us on to the Green New Deal and hamstrung us, disabled us from being able to function under their Green New Deal environmental policies and practices, so that's why he changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico. Now all of those agreements that we signed on to protect the environment, not drill here, and only do this to a certain extent, and only buy and sell the oil and the natural gas that we pump out of those oil rigs or whatever out in the middle of the ocean. Now none of those agreements apply anymore. I don't hear anyone talking about this. Let me know if you have any place where you've heard anyone talking about the specifics and the details about why that body of water was named. Now, I think beyond like 12 miles from your shore is international waters, and those agreements are international agreements, but those no longer apply because those applied to the Gulf of Mexico, and we're not drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, we're drilling in the Gulf of America. I'll leave a link in the description to this channel, Real Fishing Life. This guy's a commercial fisherman turned truther, and he's sifting through the Bubba Gump shrimp, but he's showing you here the particulate, kind of like people are talking about the fog a lot. He talks about the trails a lot, and I don't think I mentioned anything about his channel, so I figured I'd just let you know that's what he does. He's a commercial fisherman. And here he's just sifting through those Bubba Gump shrimp. Okay, here he's showing you the seagulls. Here he's sifting through the Bubba Gump shrimp. So I'm not pro or anti another day in the United Corporations of America. I just find it interesting that no one else seems to notice or talk about any of the specific details. President Trump has correctly identified the purchase of what is now Greenland as a national security priority, and we will proudly welcome its people to join the freest nation to ever exist when our negotiator-in-chief inks this monumental deal. Maybe it's like the movie Greenland, and they're all jockeying for position to be king of the ash heap because they know that the cataclysm is just around the corner, so all bets are off, and we're just going to take whatever we can. When the shit goes down, we'll sort it out later. Just like he said, take the guns, work out the details later. We'll take the land and we'll work out the details later. We got some apocalypsing to take care of. Business as usual in the time of the apocalypse, and business is good. So I wonder how many other countries are going along with the name change, because if it's just done by executive order, it could change names every 4 years, and all the contracts, they could never expect a contract to actually be held up to, because 4 years from now, a new guy will come in, rename this continent or that body of water, or maybe even the whole planet. Yeah, all that stuff that you used to think about we had deals about the planet. No, that don't apply no more. You're no longer on planet Earth. Planet Earth doesn't exist anymore. This is Planet Zorg 2.0. It's like these people are referencing Google Maps as proof. Well, there it is. It's official. Google Maps even changed it to Gulf of America. It's official. Gulf of Mexico no longer exists. And this is kind of like the fear people have about digitizing books. They can just rewrite the maps, rewrite history at the push of a button. Now, sure, you crack open the Encyclopedia Britannica or any paper map in the whole world, it'll still say Gulf of Mexico, but according to everyone now, that no longer exists and it never did. We're at war with Eurasia and allies with East Asia, and it was never the other way around. 2 + 2 = 5, and you forget that you knew that it was ever called the Gulf of Mexico the day before in the world of 1984 digital version. They don't have to go to the Ministry of Truth and start editing the headlines and burning the old papers. They just pass an executive order, and as long as Google Maps, hey, Google Maps says it's true, it's official. That's like and Snopes, even Snopes says it's the Gulf of America. Shazam. Abracadabra, with my mouth and with my words I create. In the Hebrew, I create as I speak. Abracadabra. It's now the Gulf of America. Geneva Convention, Schmeneva Convention. These are detainees, not prisoners of war, and we're not torturing them. This is enhanced interrogation. And those guys, they're not suspects, they're persons of interest. And when people are willing to use these kind of weasel words for wiggle room, what good is making a deal with them? They say, no, I told you I'd give you $1 million doll hairs. No, you said $1 million. No, I said doll hairs. That's the level of mentality and word magic we're dealing with here. We have all these written contractual agreements that we both agreed to about the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, well, this is the Gulf of America. Shazam! I'm sure there's endless examples that we can find of this kind of word magic. These aren't illegal aliens, they're undocumented migrants. I've even heard a police officer, like when you say, what, am I under arrest? No, you're just being detained. And I heard a police officer say, that spontaneous utterance that you just uttered. That thing I just said, that spontaneous utterance, because it's worked into the wording that hearsay is not admissible in court. But if it's a spontaneous utterance, then it can be introduced as evidence into the court case. But the bottom line here is reality itself unravels, and you become enveloped in a world of lies where there is no solid foundation of reality, and you cannot deal with people when their reality is so fluid. They just make it up as they go. Maybe on the upside of all this is that the house of cards will collapse, the house that's built on sand, and people will break free from the spell once they realize, and we'll get back to something that's more real. When we see the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz was just hocus pocusing us the whole time, and it was all built on a charade, and we'll get to what's real. Somewhat related, I've been hearing these rumors that Anna Paulina Luna, Congresswoman, was going to reveal some big secrets, and people were suspecting it had something to do with UFOs and stuff. And then it turns out they keep flopping back and forth. Has she got a task force or a committee? Because committee is usually more permanent. Task force is usually more temporary. And it's straight out of the movie Wag the Dog, where they create a war, an illusion of a war. And I think it was Robert De Niro says, yeah, give them the task force thing. Give them the task force thing. They love the task force thing. And so now Congresswoman's going, now we can finally get some things done now that we got a task force. Hopefully the whole charade comes down, reality is once again reconnected to, and the whole facade comes crumbling down, and the people break free from the spell of the mind control. Government. Control of mind. Speaking of Wag the Dog and the illusions of wars, I'd just like to remind people about the videos I made showing where the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces tweeted on 2 separate occasions clips from the video game Arma 3 saying we took down some of those Ruski helicopters today. And he got caught for it both times immediately. So the second time he did the same thing, he had already been outed for doing it the first time, when it was clips of the video game Arma 3. Details of this can be seen in the video linked in the description that I titled Managing a Controlled Apocalypse, Part 2 of 2.
Get it done. Whoa, shit. Pull up. Pull up. Whoa, shit's getting real. Got him. Oh shit, take a little bit of damage. Oh no. I stand with Ukraine. I stand with Ukraine so hard. Get him. Oh, fuck that. Take that, you Russian Nazi. Bam. Woo, sexy time. Get him again. Get him again. Here's another son of a bitch. This fucking racist Nazi, Hitler, Russians. Boom. Got him. Ooh. Looking good. All right. 2 down. Skillful. Oh, shit. It's gonna get, oh, uh-oh. Oh, that one got away. Oh, there's birds in the background, so you know it's real. Oh, no, he's like, oh! In from behind. You know what I'm talking about, Don Lemon. Boom! He got a little bit of that Jeffrey Tubin. Take that, you fucking sons of bitches. Stop Russia. Hashtag war. Hashtag I stand with Russia. Hey, you know it's real because it came from the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces. Holy shit, that's insane. Wow. Okay, maybe those dudes did take down 7 tanks. Oh, hold on a second. What now? This is from Arma 3? Holy shit. They keep doing this. This is the second time that I know that they've done this. Holy shit.
So I don't know if that recorded the first time I said it, but this is pieces from the video I'll link in the description titled Managing a Controlled Apocalypse Part 2 of 2. Like I said, maybe they're just jockeying for position to be king of the ash heap, and they're not actually jockeying against each other. Managing a controlled apocalypse. Insert here plasma fire at an increasing rate. I also show you in this video where they're airing on Fox News images of these guys holding wooden cutouts that look like a gun, but are a wooden cutout, and you can see where the paint has rubbed off of the wooden cutout. These are not real guns. And how they show you this wartime footage on a mainstream Israeli news outlet showing stormtroopers leaned up next to this downed Star Wars craft, managing a controlled apocalypse. They're probably not actually jockeying against one another. They're cooperating with one another. They would rather you think it's directed energy weapons causing these fires than to know that it is a natural phenomenon, geomagnetic induction, and something no one has any control over. They'd rather you believe someone's got their finger on the button. But they're giving you the telltale signs for anyone who wants to see that this is not really happening. Ergo, Wag the Dog, managing a controlled apocalypse. Clowns in action. CIA. Dropping those clown bombs into your mind. Mind control. Government.
We're going to start things off with an update on the classified files situation. I'm sure you remember that Representative Anna Paulina Luna was chosen to lead the task force that will declassify those files. Well, she just released this video.
The task force on the declassification of federal secrets has been organized under the House Oversight Committee and represents a historic step towards transparency and delivering answers to the American people. President Trump has already taken steps to deliver to the American people information that for far too long has been kept under the federal government's lock and key through classification. Under Executive Order 1417-6, President Trump has directed the federal government to prepare reports regarding the declassification of records regarding the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. The task force will also examine agencies' knowledge and possession of documents regarding other areas of significant public interest, including UAPs, the origins of COVID-19, the Epstein client list, and details surrounding the death of Osama bin Laden in Operation Neptune Spear. Our first hearing is March and will focus on the assassination of President Kennedy.
Now, the response to this.
So enjoy the show, but don't get too caught up in the details as it's going down. I think there'll be a perestroika for humanity in the future. Imagine a disclosure that includes the sun tunnel. When they were asking Anna Paulina Luna, what's your committee going to be about? When she was hinting at it, they said, is it aliens? She said, bigger than aliens. The sun tunnel. People think disclosure of aliens includes they roll out some UFOs and maybe some dead bodies. But when the reality of the sun tunnel is distributed amongst humanity, they suddenly, instantly all become sun worshippers. Everybody would have their cameras pointed at the sun, reviewing the footage, maybe creating software programs that detect the change in order to expedite the process of being able to examine the openings and the closings. Perestroika was what they called it after the Iron Curtain came down of the Soviet Union, where they didn't allow anyone from within the Soviet Union to interact with the outside world, and they didn't let anyone from the outside world, the Western culture and society, to interact with the people on the inside. There was just like the Great Firewall of China, where all information that gets out is authorized to get out. Nothing gets in that's not authorized. That's what they called the Iron Curtain during the Soviet Union era. And then they instituted a policy of perestroika, where they could go out and explore the outside world. There is an outside world from here. But right now, they're definitely wagging the dog, creating these theatrics. We are in a apocalyptic process. Plasma fire alone shows that. The earthquakes, everything else that's happening. And in the process, they got to keep the people kind of entertained and occupied and distracted while this is all happening. And I'm sure you could imagine, you can conceive of and wrap your mind around the idea that the sun is some sort of portal, or in front of it, maybe they puncture the magnetic field to get through what people think of as the firmament, and they do it using equipment in alignment with the sun in order to blind people so they don't see it happening. Anywhere else in the sky, people might see it. But as long as you do it right in alignment with the sun, no one's going to see it. I'm sure you can probably wrap your mind around this idea of Stargate more easily than you could wrap your mind around the idea of transparency of the government and disclosure of the truth, a time when the truth would actually reign. Because we're in a time where truth don't matter. Reality is fluid. What's planet Earth today can be planet Zorg tomorrow. But there is hope. There is a revelation that will come. There is a ultimate truth that, once revealed, changes everything about who we are. But first we have to let go of who we think we are and the world that we've used to know in order to grasp the world of the outside. The cult on Jim Jones Island has to be broke from their ideas they've been indoctrinated with. It's part of an initiation. You have to be broken down before you get built back up. So seeing idiocracy in action is part of what will get people to be willing to let go of their old world, their old way of life. America and the American dream and all that bullshit. And this is what it takes. And only on the other side of that, letting go of the world that you currently hang on to, will you be able to latch on to the new world when it's made available to you.
So I got this grand unifying theory about what it is we might be watching. Because with something like the pole shift happening, or what Jay Dreamers calls the plasma apocalypse, a cataclysm of that magnitude, it might explain why you would see things in the lead up to it like a dry run, a dress rehearsal, like C-19 and the worldwide lockdowns and martial law type stuff. Or the fake war. Over there where they're using the wooden cutouts and clips of Arma 3 and stormtroopers. And they broadcast those things, the fake parts of the war, for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. They're broadcasting it. This isn't really what it looks like on TV. Pay attention to what's really going on here. C-19, the whole world operated in lockstep cooperation. With the exception of 2 or 3 countries like Zimbabwe and a couple others, whose president came out and said, this C-19 test, we tried it on a goat and a papaya fruit and some motor oil and a couple other things, and they all came up positive, so we threw out the test. And he got dealt with and disappeared mysteriously, just like the other 2 countries that didn't go along with it. But as soon as we're done doing this dress rehearsal, dry run, we'll all get back to playing war with each other. So you got a fake demic, C-19, and a fake war. Oh, I'm sure real people are dying, but it's orchestrated and coordinated from the top where they're cooperating with one another. It's to keep the people occupied and entertained and distracted. And what we might be seeing right now is the lead-in to something like that fake demic and that fake war, multiplied and magnified. I got people coming up. I'm gonna have to flip around. Multiplied and magnified in order to envelop the whole world. Where suddenly Trump comes into power. I'm taking Greenland, I'm taking Canada, and the Gulf of America, and Gaza. Who's next? You want some of this? And the whole world, I don't think they've responded yet. Trump applied the stimulus, the world hasn't given their response yet. I think they're all just standing around slack-jawed going, what the hell's going on here? And he's going full-blown mustachio, you know, the guy with the little funny mustache, trying to take over the world. So the world now has to unite to put down the tyrant that wants to take over the world, and thus the whole world is enveloped. And again, Wag the Dog, it's all theatrical, to keep the people occupied and mobilized in emergency status where extraordinary extreme measures can be taken because of these extraordinary extreme circumstances of the war with so-and-so or the demic or whatever. They need to create an emergency scenario so they can keep on a wartime footing, implement emergency powers acts for the real emergency of the pole shift. Something of that magnitude, pole shift, plasma apocalypse, would explain, and within that context it would make sense of why we see the whole world working in lockstep one moment for the C-19 and cooperating with one another, and then a short time later they're back at each other's throats again because they're both theatrical. But there's a real underlying need for them. And Jay Dreamer's grand unifying theory of the plasma apocalypse seems to have some validity to it, that they're all going to be rushing to the North Pole. Everyone's fighting for the high ground at the North Pole. Russia said, I think we want Alaska back. What's the fuck you ain't getting Alaska back. By the way, we're taking Greenland. And if there were any land even closer to the North Pole, we'd take that. I think there's some validity to Jay Dreamer's theory when it comes to that plasma apocalypse and the race to get north. The promised land up there. But that might be what we're seeing unfold. It's in alignment with the fake demic, C-19, and the fake war, with the wooden gun cutouts, the fallen stormtroopers, and the clips of Arma 3 broadcast as if that's all wartime footage. The next, okay, I can go this way again. Don't want to be disturbing the normies. So the next scene of the theatrical play is to make the big bad bully on the block is going rogue and trying to take over the world. And that's just within the first 2 weeks. So that causes the rest of the world to feel like they need to unite together to put him down, keep him from taking over the world. And yeah, they'll make it go along with the script of the Bible. That it fits that narrative, and thus you've got half the world already enveloped. The Christians, oh, it's playing out exactly as the Bible said it would. I'm in. That's my guy. That's my side. And because it fits that biblical narrative, they'll never see what's actually going on. They'll think it's all real. Because it fits what they wanted to be real. It proves what they wanted to believe. It makes them feel the way they want to feel as they see it all playing out according to the book. See, I told you. I'm glad I had faith. Amen. I plead the blood. They don't want to see that it's a script. It's being orchestrated and coordinated in such a way that it does follow that storyline. They want to see it as supernaturally unfolding exactly as the book said it would. And it's the hand of God. So of course they're going to make it follow. Oh, that's the big horn and the little horn. But even the secular people who don't know what the big horn and the little horn is will understand the Zog, the Zionist occupied government. Even secular people go, yeah, these guys are trying to take over the world. The rest of the world, we all need to unite. Unless we all want to get assimilated into the United States of planet Earth. And thus this will envelop the entire world. To keep them all occupied and distracted and on a wartime footing and willing and ready to receive emergency measures under these extraordinary circumstances.
One great big festering neon distraction. I have a suggestion, it's to keep you all occupied. Learn to swim. That's from the music video Enema. Some say a comet will fall from the sky, followed by meteor showers and tidal waves, followed by fault lines that cannot sit still, followed by millions of dumbfounded dipshits, and some say the end is near. Some say we'll see Armageddon soon. Certainly hope we will. I sure could use a vacation from this bullshit. 3-ring circus sideshow of freaks that are in this hopeless fucking hole we call LA. The only way to fix it is to flush it all away. Any fucking time, any fucking day. Learn to swim, see you down in Arizona Bay.
For when the pole shift happens. That's what we saw during C-19. A dry run, a dress rehearsal. The whole world practicing putting their own population under lockdown type conditions, and everyone in the upper echelon of every country cooperating with the other upper echelons of all the other countries through this one centralized hub, the World Health and all that other stuff. And so they're practicing, coordinating, and cooperating, so they find out where their weak spots are, where we need to put some reinforcements, who's not going to toe the line, like the president of Zimbabwe, we need to handle him, so that when this goes down, when it's actually showtime, that's why they did the dress rehearsal. That's why they're continuing with the theatrical war, Wag the Dog style, and that's why the next scene of this orchestrated, coordinated, theatrical Wag the Dog worldwide is unfolding. We'll let America play the bad guy, and the rest of the world has to unite to put him down. He's running roughshod around the world trying to take over the world, which causes the rest of the people to unite in a common cause. Meanwhile, they're all being played, having their strings pulled by the upper echelon that's keeping them distracted, not noticing the ground beneath your feet is lighting on fire. There's electricity coming up out of the ground. Keep y'all distracted. Something of this magnitude, pole shift, plasma fire, plasma apocalypse, would explain why the world's governments would coordinate in such grand operations. Extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures. And that's what they've been doing over the last few years. Preparing for that final conflagration, the big plasma apocalypse. It's just a thought. A thought that would explain a lot of what we've seen. Here's another thought to go with it. Some people say they're all on the same team. And the only way you see that big bright star over my shoulder? That's pretty tight. In order to get you willing to accept these radical and drastic transformation that Trump's going to enact, they gave you 4 years of Biden. And after 4 years of Biden, you'll be willing to accept these radical transformative measures. That's basically what the problem reaction solution is all about. They will accept things that they would have vehemently opposed prior to the problem when you apply the solution. So Trump's going to bring solutions that people would have vehemently opposed before the problem 4 years that we've seen. And the same thing might be occurring globally. When you're desperately in need of some stranger's hand in a desperate land, you'll accept some newcomers who are having that outstretched hand saying, "Come on, baby, take a chance with us. And meet me at the back of the blue bus, or it hurts to set you free, but you'll never follow me. Can you picture what will be so limitless and free when you're desperately in need of some stranger's hand in a desperate land? So, after you've been abused by your current master, you know, there's that saying, well, that's the devil you know, and people are familiar and comfortable with it. So we'd rather stick with the devil we know than take our chances with some stranger, some unknown commodity or unknown quantity, a variable, until that current circumstance gets bad enough, you won't want to let go of it. You think Master loves you. Well, Master's got to beat you enough to where you're like, okay, I'm willing to vote for anything. Anything besides what this is. Anything besides the current powers that be and the current regime. And then we get regime change worldwide. But the only way we're willing to accept that is if the worldwide global cabal behaves in such a way that it gets the people begging for it. They produce that worldwide problem to elicit the reaction from the people, so we'll accept an extraterrestrial solution. Just a thought. And as crazy as all of this sounds, there's going to be a solution that makes it all make sense. Like I said a minute ago, that's just a thought that would make sense of a lot of the things that we've seen that don't make a whole lot of sense, like the wartime footage from Arma 3 and the wooden gun cutouts and the stormtroopers and the C-19 worldwide cooperation. There's going to be an answer that makes us go, oh, okay, now that makes sense, and okay, it all makes sense now. And that final solution that makes sense of it all is probably going to include that sun tunnel. Someone said in one of my previous videos where I was talking about how the powers that be need us to continue thinking it's directed energy weapons, because if we find out it's a natural phenomenon they have no control over, they have no control over the population anymore, and we all go Mad Max on each other. And he missed the first part. He said, oh, they're just doing it out of altruistic reasons because we'd all start to eat each other. No, they have self-serving reasons. Because they lose all their power to control and govern and regulate society when people see the lightning coming up out of the ground and the trees starting to combust from the inside. When people see that, Nero can stand upon high and command his armies all he wants, but the army goes, no, I don't think so. I'm done. And so are all the rest of you. We're not going to... They would break ranks. They wouldn't follow orders. Just like the society wouldn't follow laws and pay their taxes, neither would the military or the armed forces continue taking orders until their dying breath when they see they ain't got many breaths left. That's the reason they would need to keep us occupied with these fake demics and fake wars, to keep us from noticing, hey, you guys, there's lightning bolts coming up out of the ground everywhere, and the trees are burning from the inside out. Because if we notice that, they're no longer in power, and they want to preserve their power for as long as they can, jockey for position to be king of the ash heap, and maintain the privileges that comes with the lifestyle that the current status quo system affords them. So plasma fire is that big of a deal that they would want to keep people looking at this and that and that and this and the other thing, and they'll roll out some aliens and some UFO technology and conduct some wars and demics and anything to keep you looking here, and not there. Because if people notice, there's lightning coming up out of the ground, and the trees are burning on the inside, and holy shit, there went LA, up in smoke. You're not going to be able to keep control over them. So it is conceivable. In the light of plasma fire, it gives you a context within which you can wrap your mind around the idea that, yeah, I could see how all of the world's governments might conspire in this coordinated, orchestrated, theatrical exercise that they appear to be doing to keep the world's population from noticing. There's lightning coming up out of the ground. The trees are burning from the inside. And holy shit, there went LA. It went up in smoke. And that says something about you, the viewers. Don't have a value judgment attached to that statement, and you'll be able to see it too. Because you're able to follow that line of logic and reasoning up until that point where I said, and that says something about the viewers of this channel. That plasma fire is that big of a deal that all the world's governments might conspire to keep everyone from noticing. But it says something about me? Fuck you, that don't say nothing about me. I shouldn't still be the only one pushing this narrative. Others should have picked up on the idea that it's not 2 or 3 fires, it's not Paradise, Lahaina, and LA, that every fire in the world throughout the last 6-7 years, you can see these burn patterns of electricity. Oh, by the way, there went Canada's boreal forest over the last couple of years. And Greece. And Chile. Those are just ones that I've covered. I could go on and on and on. And so the fact that I am still the only one pushing this understanding that it's not 3 fires, it's every fire, and the answer is so simple and straightforward, it can be spoken in one word: electricity. That says something about the people, a psychological syndrome. Maybe they'll call it plasma fire syndrome. In the aftermath, in the hindsight, when they look at the psychological phenomenon of the fact that the world was burning up from the inside all around us, yet people kept their eyes on the road and went through business as usual and blinded themselves from being able to see it. That says something about the psychological makeup of the human beings. It gives you an insight as to our behavioral profile. What is it that caused them to not see that? Is it spiritual? It's something. It does say something about people. And if you lose your attachment to the value judgment of meaning that means it says something bad about you, you'll be able to see it too. But if you maintain your attachment to it and say, that doesn't say anything about me, because you think that the something it says must be bad and you don't want to feel that way, you won't be able to see it. But it's undoubtedly true, just as true as plasma fire exists, there is something in the psychological makeup of human beings that is causing them to not see it. This is how an angel cries. This is how I show my love. Blame it on their ADD, baby. They have some sort of attention deficit disorder. A form of willful ignorance. They choose not to see it through their own will. Otherwise, there's no way they could have not seen it and not noticed and not responded. Clearly, they've chosen not to see this. And once we discover what the mechanism is, we can utilize it. We can get them to choose to not see anything else we want them to not see. We need to figure out what this mechanism within the psyche is so we can utilize it to our advantage. It would give us such power and leverage over all humanity if we could figure out how to get them to not see things that we don't want them to see. Sail with me into the dark. Sail. Maybe I'm a different breed. Maybe I'm not listening. Blame it on my ADD, baby. Sail with me into the dark.
At first, fuck you. Then, you see, this is the rubble of my house. It was destroyed by you and your arms. Do you think I will leave my home? I will leave the rubble of my home? No, I will never. I will remove the rubble with my hands and will rebuild my house with my hands. And every single Gazan will do the same as me. We will never leave our home. We will never leave our home to you.
So there you have it. This is the kind of sentiment of there. And I agree that this guy will never leave his home. There's a lot of people that are just like that over there. They're very proud people. The Bible talks about the pride of the Philistines, the pride of these people. And even though they're not the biblical Philistines, that still dominant spirit is over that area. When I was in Lebanon, I met some of the best people I've ever met in my life, but there's also a very hard-nosed people that live amongst those people that will fight. They'll blow your house up. You know, they might be nice to you, but they'll blow your house up. This is the kind of people that we're dealing with in this area. And unfortunately for maybe not all of the Palestinians are this way, but Hamas has taken this area and it's pretty straightforward what they've done. So when Trump talks about actually taking these people out of the land and moving them, which would be probably in their best interest, and if I would suggest that they do that, because otherwise the alternative is absolute death, every single one of them. And I know that's probably what's bound to happen. We know that in the scriptures it talks about this, but these people won't leave. They're going to stand their ground, and they're going to have to be pretty much all killed. At least that's what it seems like. So especially when we see the Zionist point of view, the rabbinic interpretation view of what's going on. David, do you have any comments?
We are going to see this pride of Hamas, of Gaza, completely fall. What President Trump is doing right now is in according to the Bible and according to prophecy. We must understand this. Prophecy.
Here we go.
But wait, there is more to that, because we are now understanding why President Trump is in the White House. We need to understand what is next. Point Gimel. This is our now understanding why President Trump is in the White House. We need to understand what is next. Point Gimel. This is our time right now. How do we know it? Because the next 3 verses, Zechariah's prophecy number 4, is leading us to what I've been telling you again and again. All of those things are a preview for the final battle, for the final Gog and Magog that is going to be taking place. Listen to what it says.
Fleeing. All of this. Not only this, not only are we getting these idiots kicked out of their gerbs, we're taking their gerbs. They are fleeing. All of this. Look at all of this homeless. They try to escape. Nah, we'll get you. We're going to hold all of you accountable. Nobody's above the law. You're all under arrest. Oh, no. I'm getting the hell out of here. We'll find you. MAGA World Order will find you and hold you accountable for what you have done. You're going to get fired, and then you're going to get arrested because we demand it. We just getting started. It hasn't even been a month. It hasn't even been a month, pricks. Strap in, essays. It's going to be a hell of a 4 years. We got a long way to go to wreck these people's lives, man, and it is going to be boom, Old Testament biblical good, boys. We bring us some holy fire down on these sons of bitches. All right, thanks so much for watching the video. Support the channel and keep up to date on all of this winning. Hit that subscribe button and make way.
So all of these are apparently listings on Zillow for homes for sale in the Washington, D.C. area, as if they're all fleeing the sinking ship, trying to pull up their tent stakes and run somewhere else. And the last couple of clips that I've shown you are just the telltale signs that this is fitting a biblical narrative. And when Trump got so-called shot in the ear, I made a video immediately, like the day it happened, titled "The Christian Reich Has Arrived." Reich, R-E-I-C-H, like the Fourth Reich. And I didn't know it at the time, but maybe I heard that terminology from Archaics. He uses the same terminology, said there will be a rise of a Christian Reich, like we've never seen before. It will be the pendulum swinging the opposite direction, away from gender reassignment surgeries for children and all of the other insanity we've seen over the last 4 years. That was the problem, to elicit the reaction from within the people, and then the solution that will be applied in this Christian Reich would have been vehemently opposed before the problem of the last 4 years of insanity. So we're already seeing the telltale signs. I have not heard rhetoric like this since right after 9/11, where either you were with us or you're with the enemy. And if you even say, well, maybe the other side has a point, you're a terrorist sympathizer and you're expressing anti-American sentiment. And the witch hunt that is whipped up is something you can't talk people out of. Logic and reason will not appeal to them. Compassion will not appeal to them. There is a witch hunt brewing. And the people of these religions, whether it be Christianity or Islam, are like pre-programmed foot soldiers whose training gets triggered and activated, like Born Identity type of subliminal programming, MK Ultra type of programming, where a guy can be a trained assassin and not know it until he's given the trigger word to switch his alters in his mind, and suddenly all of his training kicks in. That is what's happening when the religious are triggered. They are like foot soldiers that are in the reserves for the holy war. And then when it's kicked off and they're given those trigger words, they become activated foot soldiers for this holy war. And that is in alignment with the letter from Albert Pike to Mazzini regarding this final conflagration where they will destroy the religions by sending them at each other to destroy one another, and simultaneously they will destroy atheism, because they will see that nihilism and atheism, they kind of fall flat on their face in the presence of a supernatural forces that make those no longer a viable option. And then we will see the true light of Lucifer emerge. And I'm going to just sit back and watch this show. This is actually very difficult to find online, no matter how you Google it and try to search for it. A lot of people talk about it. Very few people actually show this letter. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by agentur of the Illuminati between political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horrors will show clearly the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then, everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilizations, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. You can take your freeze frames and pause it here if you want to read the full letter. There's the second and the third. So when we see plasma fires from geomagnetic induction happening at an exponentially increasing rate, there's nothing to lose by going all in. So the religious foot soldiers will be activated for a worldwide holy war, a psychological operation that's been 2,000 years in the making. We'll hope for an external intervention to this problem, an extraterrestrial solution to this problem, but first we have to see it get so bad that we will accept that solution that we would otherwise vehemently oppose and say, no, let us keep doing it our own way, we got this. Until we see that, yeah, we've lost our way, and without an external intervention, we're all done for. Can you picture what will be so limitless and free when you're desperately in need of some stranger's hand in a desperate land? Because until then, you got people like BP Earthwatch and plenty other mainstream Christians who say, don't take the first train out of here. The first people to arrive, that's the Antichrist and the false prophet. That's the Project Bluebeam. They're interdimensional, satanic, demonic, Luciferian fallen angels. You need to fight against them tooth and nail and wait for the second set of arrivals. That's the real God's army in the kingdom of heaven. But the first ones to arrive, people have been indoctrinated, and they need a physical, real-world experience to overcome their indoctrination. And to that, I'll just add this music video, Thunder, by Imagine Dragons. There's always lightning before the thunder, and we've been watching the lightning happen. And in this music video, 3 alien species show up to planet Earth and see themselves surrounded by sheep. And more sheep, and more sheep. Some of the sheep float off into the air. Link will be in the description. But in the end, it's celebration with fireworks. The Holy Harvest, the Great Wedding.